Morning. Perry on Gordon, Derek, welcome. We're going to be doing some knit basics today. I've got, let me be careful here, got that tangled in. A couple different things cast on. Going to be showing cast ons, cast offs, knit and purl stitches, a little bit of the knit basics here. Going to give just a few minutes for everybody to come in. I had told, oh, Billie Eilish. We got some famous people in here today. Barbell, Turtle Cam, Jean, welcome. Still working on just a little bit of coffee yet this morning. Give everybody a few minutes to get in. I got a couple needles loaded up with some different stitches, some different yarns. To show a few different things about knitting. I'm going to show cast-ons, cast-offs. The reason why cast-offs are done certain ways and certain cast-ons are called for certain patterns. And we'll be going over all of that today. Give everybody a few more minutes to come on in. And I'll just talk here about some of the swatches that I have done. This here is known as the garter stitch. It's knit every row, front side, back side, knit every row. You get a nice little ripple here. This is good for edging, for going around knitting, because if you don't edge stockinette stitch, which I'll show you here, it rolls up. Something terrible. This here is stockinette stitch, where you knit on one side, you knit on one side, the right side, and you purl on the wrong side. So stockinette stitch looks like this. Looks like a bunch of little V's. And those are actually your knit stitches, these. Reverse stockinette stitch, which is purl on the front side, knit on the back side, looks like this. Little bit different than the knit every row. Your little purl stitches here are separated by a row of knit on these. Here it's purl on the wrong side, so there is no separation in the little purl ridges. Also done a couple of needles here with some ribbing on them, just so we're ready for this morning. This is a knit one, purl one rib, where you knit one stitch, purl one stitch. You can see your row of vertical knit stitches here and your row of purl stitches there. We'll be showing you how to cast these off properly so that your edges look nice and clean. So we'll be working on that today as well. And we will definitely be showing cast-ons. So if you're new to knitting or you need a little knitting refresher, break out your needles and some yarn, and we can go ahead here and get started. I had let everybody know yesterday when I was live that I would be here at 8 this morning with some knit basics. First, I'm going to clear some of these away so that I have room to work. And we are going to start with a cast on. There's multiple different ways to cast on. I only use a couple simply because those are the ones that I like the most. Now, if a pattern calls for a specific type of cast on, it is because it needs that cast on for either stretchy or a design element. Oh, is it Tanya or Tania? I hope I'm not pronouncing it wrong. I'm glad you're excited. I'm right here in Pennsylvania, one state up above where you are, and I did grow up in Maryland. It's pretty country out there. But yes, Tanya. Okay. I'm going to show you how to do a cast on. Welcome, Hessa Life. Catherine. We're going to do the long tail cast on first. I teach it this way specifically because it lets you know the dynamics and the technical aspect of the stitch instead of just showing you, do this, do this. It's a little bit more detailed. Now, the tail end is called long tail because you pull out a long tail and you start casting on here in the middle. These stitches will be used to lock the loops, which come from your skein. So your tail end should be facing towards you, the cut end of your yarn. The end that's going to the skein should be away from you. I take my fingers just like this, and I lay that yarn right over top. Your cut end is coming to this way. The other end going to the skein of yarn. Okay? I then take these two strings and I hold them in these fingers underneath, almost like a little slingshot. Okay? Just like this. The tail end here is still coming this way, and this end is still that way. Okay? I take my knitting needle and I put it down in between my hand and the yarn. Just put it right down there, just like that. And I put it against the yarn, and then I rotate it, just like that. And that is put one stitch on there. Now, to do the long tail cast on, this is how I describe it to everyone who's learning new, so you know where your needle is supposed to be and what is going on here. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and show you. You're going to put this needle on the fatty part of the base of your thumb, right here, and you're going to run it right up your thumb, which is going to pick up that one, or actually it's going to go in the loop that's created by having it wrapped around your thumb. Then you're going to bring your needle over here to this finger, and you're going to run it down your finger, which then is going to take it behind this string of yarn here. Then you're going to bring your needle back over to your thumb and run it back down your thumb, which is going to take the string that you just wrapped around your needle back down through that loop where you started. Okay, at this point I put my finger on here and I drop my thumb. Now I'm going to come back down here and put my thumb back on the string where it was before and use it to snug that stitch up. Okay, I'll show you that again. And once you get this, you don't have to do all of this like I'm doing now. It just becomes one fluid movement. And you'll see that as I move along through today. But down to the fatty part of your thumb and run it up your thumb. Then come over to your finger and run it down your finger. You see you're catching that yarn there. Then bring it back over to your thumb and run it down your thumb. Brittany, I haven't done a whole lot of YouTube tutorials. I do come on live pretty often, and I more so come on live to help with any questions that you may have. If you have a stitch that you need help with, that's what I do. I'm just like like my Facebook Messenger for this aspect of my life here, the knitting help. 1-800-Yarnologist. Just call me and I'm here. So, I want to try to get into doing some more tutorials, but it seems like everybody likes it better when I am here live and I can stop and go back and maybe explain it with different words, because sometimes all it is the words. Several people can teach you the exact same way, but it's the words that they use that makes it click in your brain. So, not watching a video over and over again with the same words, it could be helpful to have somebody live. So I'm here, and I've went live in the evenings. I had one of my followers ask me about how to do the magic circle. He needed something to occupy his time, and he wanted to practice the magic circle. So I jumped right in live, and I helped him right then and there. I do a class Tuesday mornings, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, from 8 to 10. I do an hour of crochet from 8 to 9, and then from 9 to 10 we do knit. Sometimes I do come back on after that to finish other stuff up, stuff that we've started that's almost done. But I do get off the phone every day before 10:30 because my husband calls from work when he's at work. So there's a little break in between the morning and afternoon. Ladybug, I do classes here on TikTok Tuesday mornings. Oh yes, I love yarn. I love everything yarn. Absolutely everything yarn. But again, for this cast on, we're going to keep on going here for those who are wanting a little extra help with their cast ons. Again, to the fatty part of the thumb, run it up your thumb. Go over to your index finger, run it down your finger. And then come back over to your thumb, run it down your thumb. I will show this in a little bit more fluid movement, the way that I do it. And it's just, I'm picking up strings. Okay? I might have to take this camera up just a little bit because I'm kind of tight this morning. There we go. But it's just in the loop, grab the string. But for teaching purposes, so you know where everything is going, because there's a lot of strings right here. You don't know which string I'm talking about. So I more so describe the movements that I'm doing to show you exactly how to do it. Good morning, Judy. Yes, I love casting on a new project. I get start-itis. I get halfway through, 3/4 of the way through a project, and I'm already thinking about 4 or 5 others that I want to start. And half the time, really, before I finish a project, I've already got the other one casted on. And it's just glad that you weren't the only one. Yeah, my tail's right here. My cast on, long tail. But yeah, with long tail cast on, you have to be careful. I don't know the technical way to measure how much yarn you need before you start casting on. I just pull a good bit and cast on. I do know, since I did that Ronald Weasley blanket and my gauge was 30 stitches for a 7-inch square, that 30 inches, I stretched the yarn from my wrist to my elbow and I got 30 stitches. But there is a mathematical way. Some people wrap however many stitches they need and then they start from there. I don't know if that always works. I've tried several different ways. When I first started out with long tail was the only cast on I ever used, because I didn't do patterns so much. I was doing blankets and, you know, cabled stuff and that kind of thing, and you really didn't need a whole lot of math to cast on stitches. So sometimes I wouldn't have enough and I'd have to pull it off and, you know, do it again, which, you know, after a while. Yeah, I take my yarn with me everywhere. If I can't take my yarn, I'm not going. Literally, for real. Me and my husband go to go get takeout, and we're only going for maybe a 10-15 minute ride. I'm in the car with my yarn. I take it everywhere. So, you know, the cast on can be pretty simple. And if anybody popping in and out at any time, if you need me to show the cast on again, I've got tons of empty needles over here that I can show the cast on over and over and over. I love the look of Fair Isle, but I have issues with tension with Fair Isle and strand knitting. I can do double knitting. I have done some strand knitting. Fair Isle, it looks to me like you're only using 2 colors at a time, which isn't too bad, and catching the floats. I would really love to make a really delicate Fair Isle scarf for the fall. I would really love to. But the tension deal. I have a sweater over here that I'm working on, and I got to show you guys this really quick. And I only do a couple rows at a time because I get so much anxiety about this color work. I get massive, massive, massive anxiety here. And I haven't worked on this in a while, and I need to get back to working on it, or it's never going to get finished. But I'll show you this very quickly if I can. I put it on smaller needles, for one thing, because it was hard to work on a 60-inch needle. But this is a sweater that I'm making. There's the side slit in the bottom ribbing. And, you know, I can see a little bit of rippling in here. You can't see it too much on the camera, but I can see it in the shadowing. But I'm doing pretty good catching all my floats and everything on the back. But I just get so anxious about this not stretching properly by the time I do 22 inches of all of this detail. So, yeah, when my anxiety gets high, I got to put it down. Put it down. But yeah, I've done all kinds of knitting, double knitting. I'm working on a double knitted blanket. I started it to help a friend out because she had knit. Now she wants to learn to double knit. And it's fun. It's fun to double knit. I like to watch the, thank you. I like to watch the picture form as you're knitting. I can't, you know, it gives a whole new aspect to just one more row. A whole new aspect. But this is our cast on here. There's also, and I'm going to be using this here pretty soon, it's called a provisional cast on. It keeps your stitches live, and I'm going to take this back out here so I can show you the provisional cast on. The provisional cast on includes a little bit of crochet, because you actually crochet a chain and then you pick up your stitches from that chain or through that chain. It keeps that row of stitches that you pick up live. So when you do, well, I'm here to help anybody who wants to improve. I have an Addy knitting machine as well, but here to help anybody who wants to improve their knitting skills. If the whole thing about knitting and crocheting is basically keeping your stitch count accurate and your tension. Tension's a big thing when working, you know, crochet and knitting. But I'm here. Good morning, Marie. We're going to be working on some knitting basics this morning. I hope you saw my message. We're going to be working on cast-ons and cast-offs and basic knitting stitches, and any questions that anybody has about knitting. Can you show me this stitch, or how do you do that? Please just jump in, because that's what I'm here for. My mother taught me to knit. I learned to crochet at 9. My mother taught me to knit when I was 11. And I will be 52 this year. So I'm going to show you the provisional cast on. And I can use these for headbands, the knitted headbands. Infinity scarves. You can use this for infinity scarves. And you don't even need a pattern. You just, you know, pick a stitch, do your scarf, hook it together at the end when you're done. You do almost like it's almost like a 3-needle bind off, which I can show you all of that stuff. That's more experience than what we need for knit basics. Okay, I'm going to show you how I keep control of all of my stitches as we go through this, and how to do the purl. I've got several stuff casted on over here so I can help everybody. But I'm going to show you the provisional cast on. Now, depending on how many stitches you need to cast on, you are going to make a chain that is at least 5 or 6 stitches longer than the number that you actually need for your knitting. So I don't know how many stitches I've done here, but I'm going to show you what we do. Okay? We clip this off on this last chain right here. You're going to pull your yarn through. Don't snug it down, because when you come back, that's how you're going to loosen and pick up your live stitches when you're done. So just leave this loose, just like that. Okay? Now, for doing the provisional cast on, what you're going to do, you want to use a color that's different than the yarn that you're knitting with. That way you can see your stitches really well. You don't have to, but I recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it. I need to find a different color, because all the other colors I have are just as light as that. Alright, here we go. I've got cakes and cakes and cakes of yarn everywhere. I'm going to have to take a picture of my desk when I get done and show you guys what situation I'm working in here. It's comical. But When you do your provisional cast on, you're going to come at least 3 or 4 stitches away from this end. Okay? Start up over here. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a couple of stitches on this side of your chain and a couple of stitches on the other side of your chain that you're not using. So say you've got to cast on 10 for your knitting. You want to have at least 18 in your chain. That way you've got 4 stitches here, you do your 10 cast on in the middle, and you have 4 extra stitches on the other side. So we're going to come 4 stitches over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to the 5th one. Put your needle in through the chain, just like if you were going to go and do a single crochet, but you're going to do, and I'm using crochet terminology. I hope everybody knows a little bit of crochet here. I'm assuming that you all do. I take and fold my yarn back over itself, at least enough to cover, my 4 fingers, because I use that extra to weave in. All right? We're going to put that right on the needle, and we're going to put a whole lot of tension on this red yarn right here. And we're going to pull this up, and you're going to see that the stitch is going to come through there. Okay? You want to use the same size crochet hook as the knitting needle that you're using. Let me just tell you that. If you're using a smaller size crochet hook, which is what I did, it's going to be a little harder to get it through, but it's no big deal. Okay? Again, for your next stitch, go right into that next chain. And it's only the one loop. We're not going through both. We're only going through this top loop. Let me pull this up over here. So I got a little pointer. We're only going through this top loop here on your chain. We're not going through both, just the top loop when we do this provisional cast on. Now, I'm just going to pull this here down because we don't need to look at that. Wrap your needle, put a lot of tension here on this red yarn, and pull this up through, and it'll come right through. Now you got your 2 on there. Okay? And I might work on this a little bit to show you some stitches. That way I can show you this provisional cast off. You can do this for can coolers. So you have a seamless, almost seamless close on them. You can do this for anything that you want to stitch together on the other side. Infinity scarves. If you want to make a headband. And my stitches are getting a little tight here. There we go. A headband, a knitted headband. What else? I'll think of some more things that you can use this on. This provisional cast on. Anything that you want to knit in any length and then stitch back together. This would help you not have to sew a seam because you would just bind it off all together. And I'll, do my best to show you that. Provisional cast on. There it is. The reason why I use a different color yarn is when I come back to the other end, I can really see those stitches really well to pull them off of there. Okay? Marie, if you're still here, we are going to start doing some stitches here. And I know I have all this string hanging off. And I'm going to show you right on this a couple of stitch demonstrations because it'll help me knit this up enough that I can do the bind off on this. Or cast off. It's the same thing, just different terminology. Let me grab another needle over here. And a knit stitch. Okay? Each one of these is a stitch. For anybody new to knit, we're just going to go way back to the basics. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 stitches across here. Okay? Now, I'm going to show the knit stitch first. The knit stitch, and Marie, I'm going to show you this too. Okay? These fingers are holding my needle. I can let go with these two and just have it with my pinky. Most of the control of this needle is these 2 fingers here and my middle finger because I'm holding it like this. Okay? Now, these 2 fingers, my thumb and middle finger, are controlling moving my stitches. The index finger is controlling this stitch right here. I can move this stitch all over the place with this finger and it's not coming off the end of my needle. Another thing that's going to help you keep, let's grab a hold of the right, we're on the wrong end. Here we go. Another thing that's going to help you keep control of your stitches is tension here on this yarn that you're holding in your other hand. If you tighten this up, this isn't going to move around too much. Okay? So, also, this hand, it's almost the opposite. I'm holding my needle here. I'm controlling my stitches that are coming onto this needle as I do them with this finger. And these here are pretty much holding my needle. Okay? I'm going to show you how to do the knit stitch, and I'm going to tell you what my fingers are doing, which helps new knitters know how to hold the knitting. This is not the only way to hold it. It's the way that's comfortable for me. You'll find the way that's comfortable for you. You might not hold. I'll show you several ways to hold your working yarn, because not everybody holds it the same way, and there is no right way. It's whatever works for you. That's the best part of this. It's whatever works for you when you're holding this. I only tell you how I hold everything so you see the full dynamics of what I'm doing, and not just a stitch being, a bunch of sticks running around like everybody says. So for a knit stitch, we're going to go to the left side of the stitch, this being our stitch we're going to do, and we're going to put our needle in through the hole that is made by it being wrapped around the needle. And we're only going to catch one side. We're not going to go like this behind your stitch. We need to go through the middle. And the needle that you're working with goes up the back side. You see here, it's up the back side. And our yarn is to the back or away from us. Okay? You're going to counterclockwise wrap your yarn. When you pull tension on this, you're going to see this yarn drop down below this needle. When I pull tension, there it went. That helps hold your stitches on your needles as well. As I'm pulling this needle down back through that loop, I'm going to keep this point touching this needle, which helps assist in not dropping stitches for new knitters. Okay? And I'm also going to tighten up my tension on my yarn. This hand holds the yarn. I didn't add that in the beginning. My yarn is normally here, which tension is created by it sliding through my fingers. If I need extra tension, I will wrap it around my pinky and do it like that. Okay? To finish performing this stitch, I'm going to tighten this yarn up, this needle touching this needle all the way through. You can see it's still touching, comes right around the bottom, and there's your stitch. I let go of my tension so that I can get the true size of this loop that I need. You got to bring it up back past the beveled portion on your knitting needle so that you get the true size. If you make it too tight, when you go back to do your next row, it's really hard to get this needle in there the way you need to. Okay, again, knit stitch. Go to the left of the stitch, in through, your needle goes to the back, and your yarn is still to the back. Counterclockwise wrap your yarn, put a little tension on it, and it drops right down in the middle, which pretty much locks your stitch in there. And keeping this needle touching the other needle all the way through, you don't drop your stitch. You see I'm holding stitches here, and when I go to take the stitch off or wrap the needle, there's something else that I'm not showing you. Push it off. Okay, when I do the knit stitch, you see how I've let go of this needle? It's all pinched in together. So that needle's not swinging or falling out. Pinch both the needles. I got my thumb on this side, my finger on this side, and just pinch so that you can wrap your needle. Okay, a lot of people don't teach it that way. I do, because you're watching the stitch, but you're not watching what the hands are doing. And it's really important what the hands are doing, because that helps you know what to do and how to hold it. Once you learn how to do the stitch, you'll find the comfortable way to hold your yarn. Now, when I crochet, I hold my yarn over here in this hand. I can also knit this way. So if you're more comfortable holding your yarn in this hand like this, you're going to go in, Still counterclockwise wrap, and I have to hold this way so it goes, you heard it click, the needles just went, and pull my stitch through. This is not the normal way I do it because this slows me down. I found that holding it the other way makes it a lot easier for me to do these stitches, and I don't want to stretch that one too far. So that's my edge stitch, because I didn't work that back in, that end, because this will probably, well, it might not get pulled out. We might leave it like a little bookmarker. Now you've got your first row of stitches in there. It's kind of hard to see with that cast on in the way, but you do have a row of knit stitches in there. Those little V's underneath is your first, well, this is your first row of stitches. You never count your cast on row as your first row. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and do some more knit stitches so everybody can see the knit stitch here. Always make sure that when you're doing the knit stitch, your yarn is to the back. This doing knit every row, which is knit on the right side and on the wrong side, is called garter stitch. Yes, this is the provisional cast on. I showed the long tail cast on, the provisional cast on I use. I also use Judy's Magic cast on for socks, but I haven't done any in a while, and I would have to watch another video to do that one. Those are the three ones that I normally do. Now, there's other ones. There's many, many, many other ones. And each one has its own specific purpose. It's set to be a stretchy cast on, or it's set to be a cast on to hold live stitches, like this provisional cast on. I was telling everybody the provisional cast on can be used if you wanted to do an infinity scarf. And with the provisional cast on, when you do like a 3-needle bind off, because you'll have live stitches here on both ends, it makes it almost seamless. So, and I don't know if you can, well, can't really tell on this one here, but this is the provisional cast on. If anybody needs to see any more stitches, I'm going to do it on this one, but I'm going to set this one to the side now. Okay. I was showing this one earlier. When you knit on the right side and purl on the wrong side, it's known as stockinette stitch. And Marie, I'm going to get to some purls here, honey, but I did want to show you what I did with my hands and what my fingers were holding on to, so that you could see how to keep your stitches from sliding off, falling off. Always in control of the stitches on the ends of the needles, these two fingers, this one and this one. Right on the stitch on the needle, and it doesn't go anywhere unless you let it. Stockinette stitch is knit on the front, on the right side, which they will label RS, and it's purl on the wrong side. And I think I might have did something else in here. It looked like I might have did a knit row in there, or did some purls on the wrong side. No. Just looks funny on the back because of that darker color. That's what it is, that darker color in there. But this is known as stockinette stitch, okay, which is knit on the right side and purl on the wrong side. Reverse stockinette stitch is purl on the right side, knit on the wrong side. Thank you for all the follows, guys. I really appreciate it. And we are on a purl row on this one. So Marie, this one's going out to you, honey. Help you with your purls. And for anyone else here looking for knit basics, we're going to show the purl stitch now. Again, when we did the knit stitch, we went to the left of the stitch and in through. For a purl stitch, we need to make sure that our yarn is to the front, which if you finish a knit row, your yarn is going to be to the front. Good morning, Caffeinated Sloth. How are you? And your needle is going to go in from the right to the left, and it's going to stay in the front. Okay? Your yarn is always going to be in the same direction as the needle that you're working your stitches onto. I'm doing fairly well this morning. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. Again, you're going to counterclockwise wrap your needle. Give it a little tug, and that stitch slides right down in there. Keeping this needle touching this one again, and I've got control of my stitch here. Bring it through. There's your purl stitch. This one gets pushed off the edge. Okay, and I'm moving next stitches up. Again, from the right to the left, and your needle stays to the front. Yarn is still to the front or towards you. Counterclockwise wrap your yarn. Give a little tug. And you'll see that drop right down in there. Keeping your needle touching all the way through. This is just for the beginning knitters who have trouble keeping their stitches on. It helps until you get the dynamics of your tension and all of that. It's a little bit to get started with, but it doesn't take long. Especially when somebody explains to you what they're doing with all their other hands and fingers instead of just showing you how to do a stitch. It's hard to do it when you don't know how to hold it. It's like handing you a new power tool that you've never seen before. Well, which direction do you point it? You know, so learning all of it helps. It doesn't make it easier, but it helps. Again, we're going to counterclockwise wrap. Put a little tension on there. That stitch will drop right down in there. Okay, my fingers are all doing something. These are holding. This is stabilized. And these are moving stitches up and separating stitches. If you watch my hands, I'll do a few purl stitches here. See, I've stabilized my stitch and I'm holding both needles, wrapping. Assisting the needle out, stitch goes up, this one comes back. I'm ready to go into the next one. Hello, Samantha. See here, in, wrap. I'm pushing stitches forward as I'm pushing stitches off, and I'm going into control, because see here, as this one comes off, there's plenty of space there on the needle, but these are doing this. And my thumb separates those stitches. It's almost like I've got a little assembly line machine here on the ends of my arms. And I'm pushing stitches as I go. There is easier way. No, this is pretty much the basic functions of a knit and a purl stitch. Going to go ahead and finish out these purls. That's not really that hard. Well, I guess I can say it's not that hard because I've been doing it for 50 years. Or no, 40 some years. Yeah. But for the purl stitch, you just go in from the left or from the right to the left, and your needle stays to the front. You wrap your yarn around your needle. Your tension is a big thing, because if you leave it all loose, if I leave it loose like this, it's hard to keep everything in control, and I'm just automatically putting tension on it already. But tension is a big thing. Your stitches get too big, and you're working on wearables, and they're not going to come to size. I'm going to go ahead and finish out this row, and I have some other, just so I have this done, I have some other swatches here that I did up this morning. Again, I pushed everything to the last minute, and I did all of these swatches this morning starting at 7 o'clock. So I was on here talking to my best friend this morning. I said, hey, look, I gotta go. I gotta go. Set this one over here, and we'll pick this one here back up. This one is a knit purl rib, and I was just discussing the lifeline, Marie, is not a stitch. Okay, when you're working in pattern with knitting, a lifeline is something that you put in your stitches. Okay, you take a sewing needle, you can use sewing thread, you can use yarn, I recommend using yarn of a lighter weight than what you're working with. But you just take, and I'll show you. Let me pull my sewing needle up here. And I'm going to use, I think I have a little bit of purple down here from my project yesterday. That way I don't have to clip any more off. When you're working in a pattern where you have to make sure that you've got the right stitches in the right places, and it can be a little complicated, and you know that your work from here to here is good, you're going to take your sewing needle and a little bit of thread attached to it. And it's got to be as long, it's got to be longer than the work you're working on. Making sure that you go into the loop. You don't want to catch any of the threads. You catch the threads and you're into the stitch. You don't want to be in the stitch. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why we do this. If you're working a complicated pattern, oh, we're into a thread there. There we go. And you make a mistake and you don't notice it for rows, and you're doing lace work or strand work, and you're like, oh my God, I can't drop back down and fix that stitch. I'm going to have to take rows out. If you've got more than 5 or 6 rows, and there's not just like 10 or 15 stitches on each row, you're going to take this out, and I'll show you that here after I do a couple more rows. You're going to take this out, pull it right off the needle, and pull it back to that lifeline, which holds all of those stitches, so that you can put them back on the needle. And you know what row that's on because you mark it on your pattern. I put LL, so I know that's the row I put the lifeline in. So if I have to take this off the needles and pull it back off down to that lifeline, I know where to start back up again. The lifeline, or the way can I send you yarn? No, honey, I cannot. I'm sorry. I can give you suggestions on where you can get inexpensive yarn to be able to do a project. Dollar Tree sells yarn. I've got some chenille there. It's really nice, soft, squishy yarn. And 50 grams, $1.25. You can't beat it. So I don't use a lifeline a lot, and I kick myself in the butt for not doing it. I'm one of those knitters that like to fly by the seat of their pants and just do whatever. And I pay for it dearly sometimes. I've actually had to take half a sweater out from being completely finished. Collar band, cuffs, and everything. Had to take it all back out, all the way to just the back panel. Because instead of knitting the sleeves and sewing them on, I had to sew the sleeves onto the sweater because I hate doing a whole lot of sewing. I'll pick the stitches up in the sleeve and knit the sleeve in the round before I'll knit it and have to sew it in and seam it up. That's, you know. But then you pay the price if you get overly confident and don't do what you're supposed to do. So I'm going to do a couple of rows. This here is a knit one, purl one rib. This is meant for cuffs around the band of a hat. It's meant to be elastic, stretchy, so that it gives you a little tight cuff. Yeah, I'm too smart for a lifeline. Then I end up kicking myself in the butt. Now I'm going to be doing a knit one, purl one rib is what I'm currently working on. And I'm going to have to put this in this bowl. Otherwise it's going to keep pulling across of here. Get that out of there before we get tangled up. There we go. Knit one, purl one rib. So you'll get to see a knit stitch and a purl stitch. And I need to put that needle over here so I don't poke myself with it. I'm going to leave this lifeline in here because I'm going to show you how the lifeline actually works. And again, the knit stitch for the beginners, you go to the left of your stitch into the stitch that is created. There. Of course, you're going to see this little lavender yarn here. Just ignore that. We're going to work right along with it. It's going to go right on down there with the rest of our stitches. Now to do a purl, you're going to bring your yarn in between your needles and to the front, towards you. Okay. And for a purl stitch, you're going to go in from the right to the left and have your needle in the front. You're going to counterclockwise wrap that needle, pull it down through. Might have complicated the issue a little bit by me telling you what I'm doing with my hands. Good morning, Chris. Okay, we finished that purl stitch and I automatically just went right to a knit. You're going to take your yarn, go right in between your needles. You don't have to spread them out really far, just right in between. Some people I tell, make a little field goal. Run your yarn right through that field goal. And then you're to the back. Now we're going to knit this next stitch, which means we're going to go to the left of the stitch and in. And the needle that we're working on is going to go up to the back. I'm doing very well this morning. How are you doing? Again, a purl stitch. We're going to bring our yarn back to the front. Hopefully you are recovering well, Chris. Again, to the back. Do a knit stitch to the left. Counterclockwise wrap. Bring your stitch through. A lot of the words, I use a lot of words to talk about what I'm doing, especially for people who are new to knitting. They don't really know how to hold these needles. And of course, they're not going to know how because they've never done it before. You don't know how to do something if you've never done it before. So everybody starts off from the beginning. I started off not knowing how to hold the needles. And the thing I wished I would have been taught earlier on, which would probably made it easier, was how to hold them. What my fingers are actually supposed to be doing. You know? And now we've done here knit, purl, all the way to the end. We still have our lifeline in here. It's still right in there. And it'll be fine. I'm all up in the camera now, looking past it so I can see what I'm doing. You've tried the rib, the knit purl rib? Yeah. And then the lifeline in there. I'm going to leave that lifeline for a little while. We're going to come back to it so I can show you that. What else can I show you? Actually, I think what I'll do is show you a cast off. I do want to do a cast off, 2 different cast offs on this ribbing. So I might go ahead and let me do one more row here and then I can demonstrate the lifeline, how you would utilize the lifeline to fix it if you had an error. I always finish off a row before I lay my knitting down, unless it's what I call mindless knitting, where you're just doing 1 stitch all the way across, or if I'm doing a knit purl rib. I can show you here in a knit purl rib. If I laid this down in the middle of the row, had to answer the door, telephone, grab a kid because they're getting ready to hurt themselves, take the dogs outside because they can't wait and they're going to mess in the house. You got to lay it down for whatever reason. When you come back, if you're working a simple pattern, your knit stitches, my next stitch is definitely going to be a knit stitch, and I'm going to tell you how I know that. And it's a little harder to see in the ribbing, but I'm going to show it to you in the ribbing, especially with this lifeline in here. So that little purple yarn is going to confuse everybody. Underneath of a knit stitch, you have what look like little V's. Each one of those V's is a stitch. You see all these V's here? That's 1 stitch. There's another one. There's another one. If you look directly under the needle, you can see that V. If this purple here wasn't there, you could see both sides of that V. I can show you a little bit better on this one over here. If you look here at this, and try and get it to roll around my finger so it comes out from underneath the needle. Underneath of the stitch, you see a V. That's a knit stitch. And there's only 2 stitches in knitting. It's a knit and a purl. Some people count a yarn over. I don't, because it's an increase. But you see those V's there, all knit stitches. Now, on a purl stitch, and you can see it really well on a purl stitch, at the base of the stitch here off the needle, there is a line that goes across. So you're going to know that that stitch is going to be purl. Now, mind you, if your pattern changes up your knit and purls from row to row, you're going to have to go by the pattern. So if you're not doing, you know, a pattern that repeats itself every row, don't lay it down in the middle of the row if you can avoid it. If you have to lay it down in the middle of the row, you'll have to mark on your pattern where you are very quickly, unless you want to come back and go, okay, knit, purl, you know, and count what you did all the way over to where you had stopped. Sometimes I have to do that. Oh, you're talking about double pointed needles for decreasing for like a hat. I can show you that too. I've got several needles up here, but I'd have to load up one, and I can show you how to cast on for that too. Okay. So there's a question. Normally, when you're working on double pointed needles, they come in a pack of 4 or 5 needles. I only ever work with 4. While I'm talking about the double pointed, I'm going to finish up this row here so that I can come back to it and show you the lifeline. And I'm trying to work without beating these long needles because I just grabbed a whole bunch of needles out of my needle organizer. I use the shoe organizer that you hang up on the wall with all the pockets on it. I've got it hanging on the wall, and it's got my knitting needles. Each pocket has a certain size, starting with the 0s all the way down to 15s, which I have a ton of. All right, we got that done and out of the way here. We're going to set that back here with that. Double pointed needles. These, oh, that one's a little long. These are double pointed needles. They have points on both ends. These are used for knitting in the round. I'm going to be showing the stitches several times, sweetie. That one I was just finishing up so I could get to the next thing that we're going to show and that question that popped up. I will demonstrate the stitches several different times. I have hours today, so I will demonstrate the stitches more. Normally, when I'm doing my classes, I'm knitting on double pointeds with toppers on them. These are just double pointed needles that have the needle caps on them to make them little short straight needles. So you can use double pointeds for these as well, but I need another one of these. Normally they come in a pack of 4 or 5 needles, and I only ever use 4 at a time. And everybody says, oh, that's intimidating. No, not really, because you're only ever working on 2 needles at a time anyway. So I'm going to show you again the long tail cast on, and I'm only going to cast on a couple of stitches on each needle, and I'm going to increase, or because you're talking about decreasing, let's show you the decreases. So I'm going to put about 10 stitches on each needle, which is going to give me 40 stitches. Working in the round, oh, everybody's running into everybody. But double pointed needles, when you're casting onto double pointed needles, I do the long tail cast on. I'm going to show you another way to cast on to double pointed needles that you don't have to worry about a tail. You can cast on as many stitches as you want, and you don't have to take it off and on. However, attach your yarn however you would attach it. I used to tie it on. I now do a slip knot. To do the way I do my slip knot, not everybody does it the same way. I hold the yarn between these 2 fingers, and I wrap my index and middle finger. I make an X, then I turn my hand over, and I hold that yarn right there with my pinky. I go under the front one, go to the back one, and pull it out and under. And I just dropped it off my fingers because I forgot to twist it. But that's how I do my slip knot. there's easier ways to do a slip knot. All you really have to do is loop your yarn like this, making sure that the longer part that's not the tail is in the back. Then you can take this other portion here, bring it to the front, and through that loop, slip knot. There's multiple different ways to do it, but attach your yarn on to your knitting needle however you normally do. If you don't, you will find a way that you prefer best, and that's what you'll use every time to attach your needle on. You'll do it every time. So the long tail cast on, we had to have it draped over our fingers. This one, you only have to have it around your thumb, okay? What I've done is, it's on the needle. Bring your thumb right up underneath your long tail. Let me move this out of the way. And then just grab it up underneath of here. So it looks just like this. I'm going to shorten it up just a little bit here, okay? It's just like this. Then you're going to come over here and just pick this loop up right here. Let go of your thumb. And you have a loop. Okay? I'll show you that again. Your thumb comes underneath the yarn. I'm holding the yarn here in my pinkies. Thumb goes under the yarn. Then you just come over here and pick up this thread right here. See this one right here? Just come on the underneath and up. Then let go of your thumb. You can cast on your stitches just like this. It gives you the same smooth edge as your long tail cast on. You want to make sure you don't snug up your stitches too tight because you want your stitches to slide on your needle. If they don't slide, you're pulling too tight. Good morning, Elizabeth. We're doing cast on double pointed needles. I'm going to show decrease on how you can do hats. Now, Tuesday, we are going to work on some smaller sized hats for time reasons. And we're going to working with patterns in crochet and knit. So if you want to join me on class Tuesday morning at 8 for the crochet portion, or if you're only doing knit, come see me at 9 Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday morning. We're going to be doing hats and hat patterns. All right, we're going to go ahead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do an even number. We're going to do 6. Now, we still have 3 other needles that we have to cast 6 stitches on. Okay, and I'm going to show you. You're working on a baby kitchen. A kitchen set for kids to play with. I'm going to make one up for my grandson. He was over here and I gave him a wooden spoon and a bowl, and instead of beating on it like a drum, he was stirring it. I think he's going to be a little chef. Baby blankets. Okay, now to cast the same number of stitches onto the next needle, or any number of stitches, I lay one needle on the other one just like this, and I just pinch them. I don't lay it up and down, just a little diagonal across. Okay, again, do your yarn, and you're going to grab this loop, and you're going to do it with your new needle. Okay, I'm going to put 6 of them on there. 2. Again, I'm holding the yarn here in these 2 fingers. I'm almost putting my palm down, bringing my thumb around, and then coming over here and picking up this string on this side, the one closest to you, and just snug it up. Okay? Again, yarn here in these fingers. Put your hand down, thumb around like that. Marie, I don't do a whole lot of loom knitting. I do have the looms here, and I can show you the basics. I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, need one more stitch. I don't know a whole lot of the wrapping. There's many different ways to wrap, to have a knit stitch, to have a purl stitch. You can do strand knitting on a loom, color work. You can do cables and all that kind of stuff on a loom, but I don't normally use a loom, but I can show some loom knitting on here too today if there's, if you want to see it. Again, we got to get a 3rd needle casted on because you have to have at least 3 needles to work in the round. At least 3. You can go 4 and use the 5th needle. Most of the packages nowadays only have 4 needles in it. So again, lay this one on top of this one, and the friction is enough to hold those stitches on there. They're not coming off. So you don't have to worry about these sliding off. As long as you've got your stitches snug, these aren't going to go anywhere. You can do this all day long. Okay, so don't worry about that. So these two needles can just go together like this. Your third needle, you lay it on there again, and just, what I do is I pinch just the last two. Let this one just hang out here somewhere. Okay, hold it over here in your other finger so it's not in your way. And just lay these two together. I always lay it on top of the yarn because it seems when I lay it on the needle, it slides around too much. So I lay it on the yarn. Again, I've got the yarn held with my pinky and ring finger. Hand down. Bring your thumb underneath and over. And you're going to grab this one right here. And we're going to put, well, that didn't work. There we go. We went the wrong way. Put 6 stitches on. 2, 3, 4. I never really let go of it from down here, just my thumb. 5 and 6. Okay, now we have 18 stitches around here. Now, what I always do when you are knitting in the rounds, you want to make sure that you do not twist your work. Okay, and I'm going to show you how to avoid twisting your work. Okay, because we're actually going to come and connect this over to here so we can work in the round. I get my needles straightened out, okay, so that they're all in order. And I make sure that the cast on line is to the bottom. See, they're all to the bottom. Bottom, bottom, bottom. And then I will pull the stitches to the end of this needle, because these are the stitches we're going to work now, because that's our first needle that we cast on. Always making sure that when I turn these around, that those cast on stitches, you know, the cast on line stays to the bottom. Once I get them like this, okay, bring that yarn bottom, I will hold them together over here, and I will double check again. And all my cast on lines are to the bottom. This one here might twist. So what I need to do is realign my needle. The one needle needed to go the other way. So you see that our cast on lines here are all on the bottom. All right, we can turn this back over. And if you're a right-handed knitter, this can be a little fiddly in the beginning, okay, because you're trying to get everything where it needs to be. There we go. All the cast on lines are to the bottom. And once you get started with your first row, you're going to be okay. Your string is on this one, and you're going to be working on this one. That isn't attached to anything on this end. You see on this end, it isn't nothing but the string that we tied on there. So you're going to go in just like you're going to do whatever stitch you need to do. I'm just going to do knit stitches, okay? So in to the left of the stitch and into the stitch, up to the back. I'm going to hold that little string out of the way. Wrap your needle. Pull your stitch through. Normally, I would put a stitch marker on here to mark the beginning of the row, and I need to pull one of those out. You should always mark the beginning of your row. Now with knitting, you can use regular closed stitch markers. What I do is I always go one stitch in from the end, because if not, it'll fall off once you finish that row. Okay, so I always go one stitch in and put my marker. What the heck did I just do? I just knitted that off onto a needle that I don't want it on. Here I am trying to teach you all how to do this, and I'm not doing it right. I'm going to show you all the mistakes. Okay, that's why it felt funny. We need to work on this needle, because if I put that on here, I'll end up on 2 needles, and I won't be able to get another needle back in here. So I need my 4th needle, and we'll start our first knit stitch. I always make sure when I do this that I snug this one down really tight so I don't have any gaps in these stitches. Move my marker over. And this first row can be a little fiddly, and I'm going to show you how you only need to worry about this needle and this needle right here at this point, okay? This needle you're going to hold out of the way. It's in between your fingers. It's not going to go anywhere. I need to put that in there before I drop that stitch off, okay? And it's better if you have your stitches in the middle of the needle. They don't flop around so much if they're in the middle of the needle as if they were on the end. Okay, so we're going to knit the second stitch. And right now we're just going to be working around these needles for a row or two because that's just where we are. Okay, not making anything right now, just showing how you knit in the round. On double pointed needles, there was an ask for decrease help. So I showed the cast on the double pointeds, and I've got a little piece of thread there instead of going in the stitch. And I'm just knitting around. This is always a little fiddly for me to start out with, even though I've been doing this for a long time. Normally, I don't knit on double pointeds. I knit on circulars. And then once you get them all off, this becomes the new needle that you're going to work with. And everybody gets intimidated because there's like 4 needles over here. You're only working on 2 at a time, just like the others. DPN's made you use magic loop. Yeah. I use the Addy Flexi Flips when I do double pointed knitting. They are a lot more flexible. And they're not as fiddly as double pointed needles. But we're just going to keep knitting here. If anybody needs for me to slow down to demonstrate the knit stitch, and this is a little tight. See, I'm having a problem getting this into here, but we're going to make it work. If you have an issue getting your needle in, you see me going all the way up like this. If you have an issue getting your needle in, get as much of it in as you can. Do your wrap. When you pull it through, make sure you run it up past the beveled part so you get true sizing. So next time you won't have to fight. Yes, it does feel like you're fighting for your life to get in that stitch. But yeah, just put the pointy part in there as far as you can. Don't try to shove and struggle and all of that. Just get that little pointy part in there as far as you can. Make sure you keep good tension on your yarn as you're coming through. And on this, I will hold it, touching this needle all the way around. What I basically do is I put that needle on there and I will run it right around that needle just like that as I'm going through that stitch, especially if it's tight, because I don't want to lose it. Okay, I'll get a row or 2 done here, and we're only going to be doing knitting because we are working in the round. We don't have to turn our work. We're doing a more tubular style knitting. For hats, socks, you can do scarves like this. And here again, I snugged those up a little too much. But there's always ways to get around it. You just get that needle in there just a little bit. And you can see when I pull my tension, that pulls that right down in there. Right down in there, really good. But then I'm still coming all the way back here to make sure I get true size. Even though these are only demonstration pieces here, I still want to make sure that I'm showing you properly how to make sure you got the right size loop. So if you didn't need to have a right size loop, we wouldn't have so many different sizes of needles. So there is a reason for the different sizing in the needles. Different size yarn, different design elements and everything that you want for that kind of thing. I'm going to put this away before I end up knocking it over. All right, now we're coming up on the beginning of our row again because we're here at our stitch marker. I'm going to do a couple more rows. Yes, you can make hats flat. You can make hats flat and do the decreases and then sew a seam down. Yes, you can. Tuesday, I am going to show some of that. Here we're just doing knit basics today. A lot of people in class were asking how to do a purl stitch, how to do a knit stitch, the basic cast on, and it's a little bit harder to, go ahead with the class when, we've already got the cast on and somebody asks, and I cannot not answer a question. I just can't do it. Everybody's out there looking for help and all of that. Lilybug, this is for working in the round if you don't have circular needles. Before circular needles, this is how they used to make, socks and all that. It was done in a round. So you can use 3 needles. You can use 4 needles and have a 5th needle that you're working on. I only ever work with 4. The 5th needle I always thought was for cabling with, and I would use that 5th double pointed needle to do cables. Again, I'm doing the knit stitch. If anybody needs me to slow down and show you the dynamics of the knit stitch, please say, show me again. Yeah, I just cast it on. Color scheme for what blanket? Oh, I do crochet too. If you need crochet help, I'm here for that as well. I'm here for that as well. You guys help me fill my time during the day. My husband comes home every day. He said, "Did you go live today? Did you have a good time? What'd you do?" That's the first thing he asked. Did you go live today? He knows the days that I go live, I'm happier than the days when I don't. It gives me the serotonin, dopamine, whatever it is that makes you happy. It just makes my day a whole lot better. I'm here to help everybody with knitting. That's what we're doing today, Tess. Lilybug, you do loom knitting. I might have to hit you up for some wrappings because Marie asked about loom knitting. I do just a basic, I think it's an E-wrap, and that's the only one that I've ever used. I discovered that I liked hand knitting more than the loom knitting. I did do a little scarf on the loom. It was one of those little square or one of the little rectangle looms that are only about, 3 inches long maybe? Oh, knitting, yes. Westy Lover. There's 2 books that I'm using right now for class just because I wanted the books because it's got multiple stitches for knitting and crochet. I do have links for them in my TikTok on my profile page. Right above my videos, there's a Linktree link, and all the links that I use are in there. I did put 2 links in there last night for shoe measurements if you're making socks. And I'm going to show a little bit about that later today too in this. I stopped for some reason. What did I say? Oh, the books. I get to chattering and my memory goes off. For the crochet portion of class, I'm working out of this book. You do not have to purchase this book to take my class. You do not. Only if you want the book. This gives me multiple crochet stitches all in one spot. I don't have to go looking the internet. I don't know all the names of all the crochet stitches, and this just helps me a lot. I like metal needles, but for learning, especially with kids, if you're teaching kids, I would start out with wooden needles. It gives a little more friction. It helps hold the stitches on a little better. And with tension being the main thing you need to learn in the beginning, it helps. It helps. Always start with an 8 or a 9 size, a US 8 or US 9 size knitting needle and worsted weight yarn for kids. Don't start them off with small stuff. If you could start them off with a size 5, which would be a bulky weight yarn, that would be even better. The smaller the kid, the bigger the yarn. It's just like, when you start them out with crayons, you get the jumbo crayons. They're still learning hand dexterity at the younger ages of 6, 7, and 8. And to have the bigger things is better. Yesterday's tutorials will be downloaded. I will go ahead and upload to YouTube. I I didn't download them from TikTok yesterday. I have to clean up some space on my phone to be able to do that. Or I have to put TikTok on my computer, which I'll probably do, and get those downloaded today and up there. We were working on socks knitted on straight needles yesterday. And I do have those here somewhere. Where'd I put them? I'm moving everything on myself. Oh, the socks that we did yesterday on straights. But this is the book that I'm picking the stitches out of for the knitting portion. Yes, it is, but it's a little harder to find. I do have a link for my YouTube channel in the TikTok. All the links I use are in the Linktree link, which is right above my videos on my profile page. I also have links for these books to Amazon, which makes it a lot easier for anyone who wants to purchase. Again, you do not have to purchase these books. And I am not an Amazon affiliate. I do not get any commission off of anything you buy off of any of the links I post, because I don't believe in that. I don't believe in making money off of other people. So, but this is the book that I use for the knitting portion, and it's just got all the stitches. I don't like the spiral bound book because I use my books a lot. I'm worried, and it's the first spiral bound book I've ever gotten. I'm worried about the pages coming out. So I just have to be careful. But yeah, my knitting book or crochet book is spiral bound. And then, of course, the socks that we made yesterday, the link is in my, the Linktree link as well. But I also have these, and I'm going to be working a pair of socks here on live out of this book as well. So knitting socks on straight needles. If you have an aversion to knitting socks in the round, I'm also going to be, doing a lot of things on TikTok Live. More so on the teaching aspect, knitting and crochet alongs, things like that. I'm going to put some feelers out within the next couple of weeks about the crochet and knit alongs, to see who all wants to do it, what we want to try and do, because we could start out with a small crochet along, like we were requested some flat hats. Which book, honey? Knit, crochet, or the socks? You know, I want to get a feel from you guys what you want to do, as far if you want to do a knit along or a crochet along. And it doesn't matter your skill level. Okay? Okay, socks and crochet. As far as knit socks or crochet socks, because you said socks and crochet. I can knit socks and I can crochet socks. It depends on what you guys want to do. I'm going to try and put out a video with a poll. That way I don't have to mark down here every, who wants to do this and that. It'll be easier for me to do it that way. And I'll have to figure out how to do that. I'll get one of my friends to help. But as far as knitting in the round, when you start doing your decreases, okay, you're going to do your decreases on an even number, one round, and then the round after that, you're going to work a round of knit. Because if you decrease every round, you're going to have a little pointy cone. Hey, Debbie, crocheted socks. Okay. All right. I have a whole book over here of knitted socks that I found. It's funny. I was going through my yarn wall over here and inventorying all the yarn I have. And in 9 cubbies across, I have over $600 worth of yarn. And each one of those little 9 cubbies holds 8 50-gram skeins of yarn. But I have a whole wall, so I don't even know the whole total of the yarn that I have over here. But we're off on a spiel. When you go to decrease, we have 18 stitches. Normally, you're going to decrease 1 or 2 stitches off of each needle. We're going to go ahead and every 4 stitches, we're going to do a decrease. Okay? So, just like you would do a hat, they would start you decreasing at 10 or 12, and you would go 10 stitches and then a decrease. Another 10 stitches and then a decrease. We're going to do 4 stitches and a decrease, and I'm going to show you how we do that. Okay, so we're going to knit 4 stitches. The next 4 stitches we're going to knit. I'm going to move this stitch marker out of the way here, because that indicates the beginning of our row. Working in the round, you need to know where your row starts, because once you start spinning around on these needles and these needles move, you need to know where your round, the beginning of your round is, because you'll have 3 or 4 rounds done and not realize it. And I've done that, just knitting away watching TV, and then have to take 3 or 4 rows out because it's got to go back. Now, again, for those who are just learning how to knit, a knit stitch, you're going to go to the left of your stitch and in through your stitch with your needle up to the back side. Counterclockwise, always counterclockwise wrap your yarn. And then pull your stitch through, knock that off. We've got 2 more stitches to make 4. Okay. Yeah, no stitch markers. When I work in the round, I have to put them in there. Any other time, I won't put them in there. I'll be mad that I didn't, but I won't. And then when I go back again, knowing darn well I'm going to get mad at myself for not putting stitch markers in there, I still won't do it. Unless I'm working in the round, then it's always. Now, to do a decrease, you're going to knit 2 stitches together. There's also there's multiple different decreases, but for when you're decreasing hats, you're normally just knitting 2 stitches together. So you're going to go through both of those stitches. It can be a little wiggle to get through both of those stitches. Counterclockwise wrap like you would normally do. And now we have 5 stitches on that needle instead of 6. We're going to come over here to this next needle. Don't start your noise. No. My stepson's moving around in the house, and I don't want to mute the microphone right now. He's out in the other room. He'll calm down. So again, we're going to do 4 more knit stitches and a decrease. Again, a knit stitch, you go to the left of your stitch and in, and you just ignore this needle. It's just hanging out there. It's fine. Counterclockwise wrap your yarn. Again, another knit stitch. I'm going to do 4 of them. There's 2, 3, and 4. And these last 2, we're going to knit together. Now, if you're doing something like this without a pattern, a lot of us like to freestyle knit and just go for it. If you're knitting in the round and you need to decrease, you're going to count the total number of stitches you have on all of your needles. Okay? Here I had 18 stitches, 6 on each needle. So I know that my decrease has to be divisible by 6. Okay? Being able to do a decrease on each needle, sometimes when you've got more stitches, you're going to have more than that. But to figure out your decreases, 6 stitches, you want to have a decrease every 6 stitches. So you're going to do 4 stitches and a decrease. That covers 6 stitches. All right, Marie. And then again, we're back here to the beginning of our round. This round here, because we just had a decrease round, if you don't want a pointy cone, you want to do a knit round or a plain round of whatever stitch you're doing with no decreases. And you're going to do, oh, we jumped way over here and we're not even over here yet. We're over here. I need to pay attention. You're going to think I'm some kind of crazy teacher if I don't know what I'm doing. But I will show you all the mistakes. Even though I've been knitting for some time, I do still make mistakes. I do still have to go back and correct myself. So don't think that once upon a time, you were a new knitter and now you've been knitting, multiple years and you're never going to make a mistake. No, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And most of them are going to be counting. Any of the crafters here that know, counting and tension is the biggest thing. What is that? I must have missed the first part of the comment. Yeah, no stitch markers at all. Mistakes is how we learn. We sure do. If we don't make mistakes, we don't learn. We don't learn. Okay, now this is the row that I'm going to just knit straight through because I do not want to have a cone-shaped decrease. Okay, so we're just going to knit all the stitches, and you're going to notice that we have 5 stitches on each needle now. And when I get back to the beginning, I'll explain more about decreases. If you want a nice smooth decrease, you're going to do a plain row with no decreases in between each decrease row. If you want a pointy decrease, you're going to decrease every single row. And it will give you a pointy decrease. It might give you a flat decrease if you do it right. Oh, thank you. Carter's, thank you. Again, this is the last needle that we need to knit straight through on because that's the stitch we're doing. Elijah, are you on your way out, buddy? I don't think you can hear me. I hear him moving around out there. All right, now we're back to the beginning. Now, since the last row we did 4 stitches and then a decrease, this row we're going to do 3 stitches and a decrease. And then the next decrease row we do, it'll be 2 stitches and a decrease. And then after we do a regular straight row, it'll be 1 stitch and a decrease. Do you see the pattern there? Decrease is whatever number you start out at, unless it's otherwise indicated in a pattern. You're going to have a number of stitches and then a decrease. Then you're going to have a regular row with no decreases. Then the next row is going to be 1 stitch less. All the way until you only have a couple of stitches on each needle. Some will have you, and this one we're going to do 3 stitches and then our decrease of 2 stitches. We're going to do that all the way around. 3 stitches and then knit 2 together. I have a little bit of problems. I haven't worked on double pointed needles in so long because I have my Addi Flexi Flips, and I'm going to have to show you those. And I've pretty much been working with circular needles. And I do have a small circular needle for making socks. It's only like 9 inches in length total. So I really don't have to work on double pointeds unless I'm making hats. And we are definitely going to be doing hats on Tuesday. But I might do some today depending on, or maybe tomorrow. We're doing knit basics today. Okay, and then we're going to do another row of just plain knit. No, I'm actually doing decreases on double pointed needles. We had a question about how to decrease on double pointed needles, and I'm just showing that. Normally you would decrease down to 2 stitches a needle, and then you would fasten off with a knot, after casting off. You would fasten off, and this is our straight knit through. Fasten off your work after casting off, and you would leave a long tail when you cut your yarn, and you would use that tail to weave through your stitches that you cast off, and you would draw it shut. Okay. And now we're back here. I could keep going, but I'm going to go ahead and show you the cast off, which is one of the other things. Good morning, Chaos. How are you? I'm going to show you the cast off at this point. Normally I'd work down to just 2 stitches a needle, but to save time, well, I'm here to teach. I'm here every Tuesday. From 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, teaching an hour of crochet and an hour of knit. I also, and I'm going to take this stitch marker out of here so we can do this cast off without a whole lot of stuff in the way. I'm also off and on throughout the week. I'm going to try and be on more trying to de-stress my life so that my health doesn't prohibit me from doing this and the things that I want to do. To cast off, we're going to knit the first stitch. Then we knit the second stitch. And then we're going to go back here to the first stitch and we are going to pick it up just like this. Put our needle right in the front of that loop. Tighten your tension up on your hand here, on your yarn, and we're going to take and pass that stitch right over top of that one and right off the needle. Okay, again, knit the next stitch, come back here to the one before it, just slide your needle right up underneath of that stitch there, and right, well, we're going to run that stitch off the end, right off the top. Always bring it back down past that bevel point to make sure you got it to the true size that the loop needs to be. Otherwise, you're going to have really tight spots. Okay? Again, I'm going to come up a little closer so we can show you. Wrap your yarn, do your knit stitch, and then you're going to come right up underneath the front of here. If I can keep a hold of my needle here. And get a hold of that stitch. You're right in the loop there. I pulled tension on the string here so that when I bring this up, it brings that stitch down. Oh, I'm going to kill that boy. I don't know what it is. Fireworks have tormented me last year and this year, and I just can't tolerate the sound of any loud snapping bang anymore. And that boy just slammed the trash can lid, made me feel like I needed to take off running. Oy. All right, we're going to knit the next stitch. Come back here to the previous one again. Just grab it right in through the loop. Pass it right over and off the end of the needle. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way till we come to the last stitch. Okay, and this is the cast off, just a regular cast off. You don't want to cast off too tight because you will cause your work to gather, especially if you're casting off a flat piece like a blanket. You don't want that cast off to be shorter than the rest of the blanket, and it will if you don't run your yarn back past the bevel to get the proper size. It will gather the top of your flat work. Okay, and then we got one more needle to do. And we'll cast this off. And what I do to grab that loop is I kind of stick my needle in there and go underneath the other needle and go to the right. Just kind of twist my needle, put the needle in and twist to the right, and it catches it. Really easy to do. Back above the bevel so you don't shrink your loop too much and pull everything tight. I've done that to where I've had to take a cast off and redo it after I've cut the yarn off. Okay, and then we've got our last stitch here. Pass this one over. Then I pull this just so I don't yank it out. Handy dandy crochet hook. Yes, I use crochet hook with knitting. Put my crochet hook in here. And what I'll do to make this edge nice and even, because you can see it's a little higher than the other side. I will come down here into one of these knit stitches right here that I just cast off with my crochet hook and do a little slip stitch. And actually I'm going to catch a little bit more than that because that put me right in the middle of a stitch. And I don't want that great big gaping hole right there on the edge. And just do a little slip stitch, and then I chain two. I think that still put a hole there, but this is just for demonstration purposes. Go ahead, and I'm going to leave a little long tail, okay? Especially for your hat, you want to leave a long tail. Then you're going to pull all of that through. Pull it all the way straight through, and I pinch right above that chain, and I pull, okay? I'll pull. And it takes that knot right down along the line of everything else. Because when I go to weave it in, that knot's going to disappear. Okay? And I just put that needle away. Now I got to get it back out. But it's sharp. So I didn't want to end up with it in my elbow or the underside of my forearm. All right. And then all I do, going in the same direction that I was knitting, okay, I'm going to go from the back to the front, inside to the outside. I'm going to go through those stitches. Okay, and I'm catching both sides here of my cast off. Okay, not just one side, both sides. You don't have to pull it really tightly while you're sewing it up. Just make sure you go through and catch your stitches. I have got to get a lot better lighting because this is actually a cream colored yarn and it looks like it's cast in light to where you can't see it. Makes the camera go like bright fuzzy. I don't know why. And we're going to work all the way back over to where we started. I can see my little knot right there. Get through these stitches here. Okay, now we're back to the beginning, and what we're going to do is we're going to pull it. And why is stuff not working? I must have went through, instead of the loop, I must have went through the yarn. I had to have, because that should pull shut. And it's not. See, all the mistakes. But you'll run your yarn through there and you'll pull it tight, and that'll close that hole up. Okay? You can also do this in reverse, starting out with just a couple of stitches and do your increases to make it as wide as you want it, and then make the body of your hat, and then do your rib at the end and cast off on the bigger side. I've done hats that way as well. I'll look at these comments here, make sure I didn't. Good morning, Llama. Miss anybody's comments? Socks and hats. Everybody's into socks and hats. Tuesday, I will be doing hats. Knitted and crocheted hats in class. We probably won't get them all finished within an hour. Not a full-size hat. So I'm going to kind of try and pick like an infant or a newborn hat that we can work within the hour. But you will have hat basics. If you can make a small hat, you can make a big hat. It's just more stitches. And I'm gonna use some patterns. So today I will be linking some patterns for hats that we'll use on Tuesday. If you want to try and practice on your own until Tuesday's class, you can do so. If you don't want to and you just want to wait until class, that's fine. I am going to do a little video letting everybody know that the links are up for the patterns that I'm going to use and what we'll be going over. Normally I try to have that posted by Sunday. I've kind of gotten away from it, stress in life, and I need to get back into my routine because my routine made things better. So we've just been running willy-nilly in chaos here, and we're going to get back into some organized stuff. Now, as far as this lifeline, we've come back to our lifeline here. We've made a mistake in these rows above the lifeline, and it's going to be way too much to have to, one stitch at a time, take it off. So what we do, and everybody's going to gasp when I do this, everybody always does, we do this. Pull the needle right out. This lifeline is through the stitches. Actually, Debbie, I've already done some bucket hats and those are posted. We can do a bucket hat and a crochet along if you'd like. We'll have to schedule that and we can talk about that a little later. What you're going to do now, because you've made a mistake in these rows and it's too much to have to figure out because you've got some kind of complicated pattern going in there. Knitted dresses, okay, we can do that as well. I'll put a thing out there, but we're just going to pull. We're going to pull our stitches all back out. And the thing that is really great about a lifeline, and I hate that I'm doing this now because Marie's not here. I'll have to show her again. Once we get down to this point, it's not going to let you pull any more stitches out. Okay? You can see it stopped me right there. I cannot pull any more stitches out. What I'm going to have to do, though, is get that stitch back up here because our lifeline is in there. And this allows you to be able to go, you can see the lifeline is through the stitches. You can go right back straight through here very easily, knowing that you have not dropped not near one stitch because you got them on a lifeline. This lifeline saves your life when it comes to knitting. That's why it's called a lifeline. I know that when I was a younger knitter, you can see here I'm picking up every single stitch. I don't have to worry that there's going to be a dropped one. I don't have to worry that I'm going to pull past this line. And when I put that lifeline in there on my pattern or on a little piece of paper next to my pattern, I make a notation that I'm on row so-and-so with an LL, lifeline. So that way when I pull it back, I ain't got to sit here and figure out what row of the pattern I'm on because I don't remember how many rows I pulled back because I just yanked it. It's very, very helpful. Very, very, very helpful. Now that I've shown you the lifeline, I'm going to pull that lifeline out, and it just pulls out because it's just in the loops of the stitches. It's not through the yarn, it's through the actual, each individual loop across your needle. Now we've got this on here backwards. Oops, I missed a stitch. I put it on here backwards. When I picked it up, I picked it up the wrong way. I'm going to put it over on this needle now. This should be fun. Actually, I need to go from the other side with a different needle. Because I was working on a flat needle and I put it over on a double, or working on double pointers and put it on a flat on the wrong side. That'll happen because when you go to knit and you go to pull it to the side where the string is and you run into one of those on the other end, you know you picked it up from the wrong side. So yes, 50 years plus experience, you can still make mistakes. And I'm one of those honest, humble crafters. I will tell you when I've made a mistake. I won't hide it. I won't try and cover it up. I definitely will do my best to fix it. But, yeah. All right. Now we got that back on the end that it needs to be on, and we've got 2 needles with no ends on them. And these 2 stitches need to be done because they were not done. This way. A knit and a purl. I'm going to show you what happens when you don't bind off or cast off, whichever word you want to use. They both mean the same thing, to finish off and to take your work off the needles. The cast off is the same for just about everything unless there's a particular cast off. I don't know but of one cast off, and it's the one that I've showed you. Now, when you're working in a pattern, like a ribbed pattern, I learned to crochet first, and then I was 9, and then I learned to knit when I was 11. Yes, we will do all kinds of things. I want everyone who has a request of what they want to make, because I have short-term memory issues and I lose notes everywhere. Hit me up with a message right here on TikTok and I will plan to do each and every item that you all are requesting in a live. Now, if you are knitting in a pattern, like a knit purl pattern for a rib, which we have a knit 1, purl 1 rib here, you have to make sure to cast off in pattern. I'm going to cast this off with a regular knit stitch, and then I have another one over here that I'm going to cast off in pattern, and I'm going to show you the difference that it makes when you do not cast off in pattern. Whatever pattern you're doing, If it's a knit stitch, you need to knit it, which I'm doing right now, a knit stitch. My next stitch is a purl, so I have to purl that one. So I have to bring my yarn to the front and I have to purl that one. Okay? Now, because my yarn is in the front, it's hard to come over here and pluck this to the front. So what I do is I put my thumb on those 2 stitches and I come over here to the back. And I come in here and I pick up that stitch on the back, hold my tension tight, which holds that loop down, and I pass it over. Okay? Now my next stitch is a knit stitch with the V underneath of it. So we got to take our yarn to the back for our knit stitch, and we're going to knit. Okay? And we're just going to keep doing this. Do our regular cast off for the knit stitch here, which is on the front side. Then our next stitch is a purl, so we got to bring our yarn to the front and do our purl. And we're going to cast off just like this all the way across. On the purl stitches, I'm going to the back to pass the stitch over. All right, come on, there we go. And on the knit side, I am plucking it from the front, just like this. Okay, I'm going to do that all the way across here. I'm going to look on the regular view here, and hopefully I stay in camera frame. I've got stuff set up on my desk, so I kind of know where camera frame is without having to look through the camera. If you are a crafter that goes live and wants to show your work and use your phone to record from over top, I'll tell you some of the reasons that I have things here on my desk. This here is so I can see my comments that are all right here. If you have a lighter background, which I was told by Brittany, thank you for the heads up on that. If you put something darker in the background where you're recording, you'll see your comments. Your comments will be really, really bright. Here for more than just knit help, apparently. And of course the desktop my husband made for me. I'm going to put some legs on it because I have it sitting on top of a regular plastic foldable table, the little scissor legs on them. And I can't get up underneath the desk like I want to because of those legs. They're in the way. They cross over in the middle. All right, now I'm coming to my end here of casting off this knit one, purl one rib in pattern. I have another one already over here on needles because I wanted to show you what happens when you do not cast off in pattern. And this was a big thing that I had to learn in the beginning as a new knitter, and it drove me up the wall because I couldn't figure out what in the world I was doing wrong. That was, and all my fasten offs I do with a crochet hook. Okay, and you can see really stretchy. Cast off stays just as stretchy as the rest. Okay, and it's nice flat on the top cast off. Okay, this other one over here is a knit one, purl one rib as well, and we're going to cast this one off in just knit. And this is what I used to do. I used to cast off straight knit. Didn't matter if it was knit, purl, whatever. I have an Android phone that I am recording from. And I've got a little camera boom that I got from Amazon. I do have a video on my desk setup, and I probably should pin it to the top. I don't know if it's pinned to the top for anyone who might be interested on setting up their own little live desk or whatever. I am not one, and I'm just going to cast off and knit on this one as I talk. I'm not one to have my face on here because it doesn't matter what I look like to teach you knitting or crochet. It matters what the stitches look like. And I've never been one to put my face on the internet. Even on my personal accounts, my face is not on there. It's not on there. I would rather, and I'm having a problem here because I'm running into the skeins of yarn I have here on this side. I would rather remain anonymous. And it's funny because my daughter, she comes into my lives a good bit. First time she came into my live, she was scrolling TikTok, and she just scrolled past, and she was like, hey, wait a minute. I know those hands. I about laughed my butt off. She come into the live because she recognized my hands. And this one here, we do have the knit 1 purl 1 rib. I'm having a hard time because this one double pointed needle is really, really long. And I don't have but maybe 10 inches, 12 inches of space between my phone and the desktop. And the skeins of yarn that I have here on the side, and I keep catching this other end in the yarn. All right, and I will show you what this one looks like. And this one was not cast off in pattern. This one just cast off straight knit stitches all the way across. And for the life of me, as a new knitter, thinking that I knew everything, because my mother taught me everything, I could not figure out for the life of me why this wouldn't stretch, but this would, and this looks like that. It's not straight flat across the top because we did not do it in pattern. It kind of lays over versus this. Put them here together like this. You can see the tops of them. This one here, nice and flat. This one here, rolled over. And it's not as stretchy. Not as stretchy as this one. So, casting off in pattern for the design element itself is very important. Okay, if you're one of those that are picky about the way things look, you can see the top of that one nice and flat. The top of this one rolled over. And these stitches are, you can see they're pulled in a little bit because your edges are arcing in this way. The edges on this one, they don't arc in on the corners. Can you see the difference? How this one's coming in? These are not, because this is pulled it tight, a little tight. It's not as stretchy. So, always important to cast off in pattern, especially if you're going for look. Cast off in pattern. If it doesn't matter that much and it's a blanket, double pointed needles, Karen, are used for working in the round. Before they came up with circular needles, you had to use 4 to get a circle, 3 to hold your work, and 1 to knit your stitches with. This will give you the knitting in the round for tubular knitting, hats, socks. You can knit socks flat. I did that yesterday. You can knit hats flat. This is for people who don't, good morning, Stormy, how are you? This is for people who don't want to do a whole lot of sewing when they're finished. If it's meant to be worn round, gloves, hats, tubular scarves, you're going to knit them on double pointed needles or circular needles. Circular needles are good for tubular knitting if you don't have to do any decreases. If I had to do 18 stitches, we'd be like, you know, somewhere in this vicinity, and you're not going to be able to knit when you're working a circle that small, hence double pointed needles. The Addi Flexi Flips, I'm going to have to show you those. I did put them away the other day, so I have to jump up here to get those. I should have pulled them back down. I love these, love these, love these. They come in sets of 3 needles, okay? And they come in this neat little tube. You can hang it up on a pegboard wall if you have a pegboard wall in your craft room, which now I need one because I have a tube of flexi flips, I need a whole pegboard. These are relatively expensive. These are going to take me a little while to replace all my double pointed needles. But I do have 60-inch circulars that I can do magic loop on, and that works out just fine. The Addi Flexi Flips, they are mini. They're designed like circular needles, but because they are flexible, they're a lot easier to work with than the straight double pointed needles as far as managing how to hold them, because you would only have 2 needles in there at a time. Okay, but because they're flexible, you have the needles on one side, or the stitches on one side and stitches on the other, and you're working with your third needle, which is really hard to do with double pointed needles just using 3. I can't do it, because with half the stitches on one needle and half the stitches on the other needle, they're like this, and they don't flex. So having to work stitches off of this needle when it's stuck close to this needle is darn near impossible. So the Flexi Flips, when you've got stitches on here, on both sides, they do open up so that you can get that third needle in there to do your stitches off, unlike the double pointeds. That's why I like these so much. I told my husband, I said, I want to switch over every last needle size that I have to double pointeds. And that's all the way from 0 through 15. And that's 0, 1, 2, so that's 16 needles. And these are like $22 to $23 a set. So it's going to take me a little while. But these are a size 3. I got these because I was making socks. A friend of mine had recommended them, Naughty Gnome. She had recommended these to me and said the only issue I might have is being able to find a way to hold them that feels natural and more resembles holding double pointed needles. I love them. They're called Addi Flexi Flips. And I purchased these off of Amazon as well. But yes, I love these. I use these for all the socks that I make. So when we make socks, you'll see me using those. As far as you guys wanting to make socks and hats. Hats we can work out of worsted weight yarn. I have patterns for socks for worsted weight yarn. I'll have to look and see what size needles and everything that we'll need. So that way you guys can get prepared for what you need if you want to knit along or crochet along. And we can work on some of those. I'm going to say we're going to go ahead and do some of that maybe tomorrow. We'll work on socks tomorrow because hats we're doing Tuesday. So I can show you several different ways to make socks. I'll probably take the rest of the day today unless we have any more knitting questions, because you know, I don't want to just leave y'all guys hanging. Regular circular needles look like this. This is a circular needle. It's a needle with a cable. You got 2 needles, 1 needle on each side. Public access TV. I have been told that I have that 1-800 voice. Home Hookin' told me I have that 1-800 voice. Yeah, this is a regular circular needle right here in my hand. Oh, thank you, Laura. It's kind of, I think a more calming voice and a more patient person is what's needed for teaching. Because you have to have patience with people. Just because I know how to do it doesn't mean it's going to be easy to teach, number one, and doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to pick up for the person I'm teaching, number two. So to remain calm and to remain patient in times where people are going to get frustrated because they're trying to replicate what I'm doing on a video, I just find it helpful. somebody to be, oh, well, don't you know what you're doing when you're frustrated and trying. It's not going to be very beneficial to either party. So, I'm really big on inner peace and serenity, and it's taken me a lifetime to get where I am. A lifetime. So, but yeah, these are circular needles. You use these for hats, gloves, anything worked in the round. Circular needles can go up to 60 inches from tip to tip. So you can use those for making blankets when a blanket won't fit on a 14-inch knitting needle. Circulars can be used to make sweaters just because you don't like a whole bunch of stitches bunched up. I do notice that when I work with circular needles, and I work with them all the time, my circulars are my flat needles, because it seems that my flat needles, when I get so much weight on them, it's heavy on my hands and I can't knit as long. I have to take more breaks. So for some reason, a circular needle, because when you've got all your stitches on one needle, it's heavy on that hand. And as you're working it, it becomes heavy on the other hand. But the circular needle, your stitches are evenly spaced out between both hands. So both hands are sharing the same weight. It seems like I can knit longer just working on circular needles. And they have the circular needles in 9-inch lengths, which means 9 inches from tip to tip. Let me grab these over here so I can show you. Oh, here's a small one. This one here. One more. This one. Nope. I'm pretty particular with certain brands. I normally buy everything Susan Bates, just because I like the Susan Bates crochet hooks. I like the way they grip the yarn. There is a difference in crochet hooks. Knitting needles, not so much. These here are a 9-inch set of knitting needles. These are used for socks. They're a US size 8. There's a Haya, but they're really small. These could be used for making socks and hats with worsted weight yarn because they're a size 8 needle, which is the same size that I've been using all morning long. But with the circular needles, the needles are incredibly short. Even on the 9-inch ones, they're shorter than the bigger ones. Okay, these here are probably a 16-inch right here from tip to tip. And you can see the difference in the needle length. Okay. And then I have, of course, a lot of my circulars are Susan Bates. This is a 29-inch circular and they measure from tip to tip. So the cable from one side, the cable, and then to the other side, needle tip. It's 29 inches. So it'll accommodate 29 inches worth of stitches. Even if you shove them all together, you can fit a whole lot of stitches on one of these versus a 14-inch knitting needle, which I think is the longest knitting needle they make. They make a 10-inch and a 14-inch. I do a lot of work with sport weight yarn. I use 3 through 6 the most. Mostly 4s, 5s, and 6s. I don't do a whole lot of work with worsted weight. When I do, it's an 8 or a 9. I did do a worsted weight sweater that called for a size 11 needle because it was supposed to be really light and airy. I did it with a size 10 because I didn't like the great big gappy holes that was in the sweater. Because the stitches were so large for the yarn that I was using. The larger the knitting needle, if you're using like worsted weight, if you go up to a size 15, you're going to have a really airy whatever you're making. It's really going to be airy. If you use the needle size that's recommended for that yarn, which is an 8, you could drop down to a 7 or go up to a 9, and you'd have nice, fabric knitted like this with not a whole lot of holes. The bigger your needle, the bigger the gaps between your stitches, the bigger the holes that you're going to have. You can see the holes there if I stretch it out. But if I was to knit this on a size 11, those holes would be a lot bigger. So your needles have a lot to do with sizing. And if sizing's important, you need to follow the needle size. If you're making wearables and stuff, it is, and I hate doing this. I hate doing gauge swatches. And I'll talk about gauge swatches as we go on. But needle size is very important. This one here is a US size 6. I can get it to zoom in there. And it's 60 inches from tip to tip. So you see all this cable in here. 60 inches. And yeah, probably the size, the needles I use the most are probably 4s, 5s, and 6s. And it depends on whether I'm making a hat. The hats will go on the smaller needles like this. I actually have a small 3.5 millimeter, which I think is a 4, that I use for my hats for the sport weight hats. I have the 8 here that I can use if I want to make worsted weight socks. I have a ton. I have enough needles to have a class of maybe 20 or 30 people and still have needles. So, and a lot of these one set I purchased, the rest of it I have been gifted, donated, estate sales, all kinds of stuff. And actually, the one needle that I have up here, this is another one that I use. This one here, it's a wooden bamboo circular, and it is a 3.25 millimeter. It's a US size 3, and it's 12 inches from tip to tip. It's got a little clear cable. And these, what was I using these for? Oh, my fingerless gloves that I designed. I've got a pattern that I need to finalize and write up. I'll show you the gloves that I used to make these with, because I've got them sitting right over here too. I love fingerless gloves. These here were made particularly to fit me. And this is, what is this? I hope I kept the label. I know it's wool. Yeah. Is that the label that's in the other language? It is. It's the label that's in the other language. I know it's wool because you can't dry it, and you have to wash it in cold water. And it doesn't have a machine. It's got a basin. You have to hand wash it. So I know it's wool. I think it's Peruvian, either Peruvian or Highland wool, one or the other, but it's really, really soft. And I wanted it to look like sweater cuffs, multiple sweater cuffs that had been sewn together. And I've got my little finger hole in here. In the wintertime, my arms get cold. I got some ends to weave in. My arms get cold, and I wear button-down, button-sleeve blouses in the wintertime, and I'll roll the sleeves up. I can't stand the button sleeves around my wrist. I can't stand it. I don't know why, but I can tolerate this. I can't explain it. So my arms get cold, and if I put a sweater on, my whole body gets too warm, so the sweater's off and on all day long. So I've got a lot of arm warmers, wrist warmers, gauntlets, if you want to call them gauntlets. They've been called that too. And this, wrote up a pattern for this, and I'll be posting that where I figure where I'm going to post it. Might do it on Ravelry. I'll have to figure out how to do that. I have had plastic needles, and I've used those over the years. I have knitted with chopsticks when I was out. My friends made bets that I couldn't knit with toothpicks and matchsticks. I've done all of that. I have finger knitted. I have loom knitted. All kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. Lama, I am in Pennsylvania in the United States. I know you are way over on the other side of the globe. You had told me that you're over there in Jordan. And I just love that I have the reach like that. Because honestly, and I said this the other day, being able to do this craft got me out of an abusive situation. being able to make a few things and make a little money, make a few things and make a little money. And I'm hoping to pass that freedom along to anybody who may need it for any reason whatsoever. You know, a second income because you're at home with small children and, you know, you need more money. Any reason. And I will share every aspect of this, the crafting part, the business part, everything that I know, every little tip and trick, anything that's going to help anybody, I'm going to share. Oh, you're in DC. I used to go down to DC to go to the museums all the time. I used to live in Maryland, and we used to get on the train and go down. Choking on coffee over here. You're in Pennsylvania also. And D. Lynn. Oh, a little bit of that coffee went down the wrong way. Or tried to. I'm in South Carolina. Oh, York, PA. Oh, you're not far from me. I am in Quarryville. You're only about 10 minutes from me, 10, 15 minutes. I like to find people that are close to me. It's really nice. But is there any other knitting questions? Now, as far as the provisional cast on, we really didn't get to that. But I'm going to knit another row or two here, and we can talk a little bit more. And if anybody has any other questions or anything else that they'd like to see, I am going to have to get off here in about 15 minutes because, again, the hubby calls at 10:30. I'm going to knit a few more rows, and I'm going to show you how this provisional cast on works. And this is the one that we cast on through the crochet chain. Again, if anybody's not here now, they're not going to hear me say it, but these will be uploaded to YouTube and they will be there for future viewing. If you don't have any luck watching a YouTube video over and over and over again, hit me up with a message and we'll do a personal live and I will help you. Just ask Chris. He messaged me. Yes, I can do color changes. PSSO means pass, slip, stitch, over. I can show you some of that here as we go because we got a small sample here and I need a few more rows to be able to show you really good this provisional cast on and how it works. I'm going to go ahead and do a color change and then I will show the PSSO. Okay. Color changes. When I do a color change, I do not knot my yarn. Never have I knotted my yarn doing a color change. Ever. And I don't. I fold my yarn over itself and it at least 4 fingers, a little bit more because I need some to weave in. I make my loop up here at the top and that's what I attach onto my needle as my next stitch. Okay. First I have to prep this. I put this over here like I'm doing Fair Isle or strand knitting. I work with 2 hands when I do color work. And I'll have to show you that because one color's in one hand, one color's in the other, and I'm knitting with both. I've got my loop here. I'm going to put it on my stitch, but I'm going to lay my yarn over my needle. When I put this stitch on here, it's going to go down behind that color. Okay, you see it there? Went down behind the color. And when I pull my stitch through, the only thing I'm going to have is that cream color right there. Reason why I put the yarn over top of the needle is now it's wrapped here. So when I go to do my next stitch, it's going to lock that yarn down. Okay, I'm going to leave that yarn underneath and I'm going to go ahead and wrap my stitch. Okay, and you can see here, that yarn is now trapped under here. I am weaving in my end as I go. This is also known as, and yes, I do have 2 colors on here, or 2 straps on here because I'm working in my end here as I go too. I weave in as I go and when I'm knitting. Again, now we're going to lay this one over top. We're going to do about 3 or 4 stitches. Okay, to make sure we got it good and locked in there. Again, here's that right here is that yarn that's going there. When I go to wrap my needle, you see it's going over top, will go over top of that one. Okay. Now I can let those go. This end I'll weave in. This I'll cut off a little long, and I'll weave it, because we've got it woven in this way, I'll weave it back down this way and then back this way again. That's enough friction that I don't care what you wash it on. Delicate, smack it on a rock in the river, it's not coming out. It's not going to come out. So now we're going to continue on with our little color change here. And that's how I change colors in knitting. Crochet, I do it a little different. And I can show you that when we get to crocheting, because today, this is all knitting today. All right, now as far as a PSSO is a pass, slip, stitch over. It is a decrease. Samantha, I will help you with that in just a minute. I think I have enough stitches on here that I can do exactly that. Okay, now for a PSSO, I'm going to knit one stitch because I don't like doing a PSSO on the edge. Okay, PSSO, you're going to have to slip a stitch, and normally you slip it as if to knit unless otherwise stated in your pattern. You're going to go in like you're going to do a knit stitch, but you're going to slip it right off. Then your next stitch you're going to knit, or whatever direction it tells you in the pattern, and then the slip stitch gets passed over. That is a knitting decrease. Okay? Knit two together is also a knitting decrease. Okay? Is that a line of pattern text that you have going on there, Samantha, in just that order, or are you looking to see those stitches individually? Okay, I'll show you exactly in order how you're going to do that. 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I got plenty of stitches. Now, what you're going to do, all right, knit two together. You have 2 stitches here. You're going to knit them together. So you're going to go through both stitches. Okay, I've got both stitches there. You're going to knit those 2 together. That's a decrease. When it says yarn forward, this is yarn backward. This is yarn forward. Okay? Now, this is also a yarn over, because when you go to do your next stitch, it's going to be the knit, not the slip one. Okay? So you've got your yarn forward. You're going to come over here and slip one. Normally, it is a given that you're going to slip it as if to knit. So you're going to put your needle in there as if you're going to do your knit stitch, and you're going to slip it right on off. Then you're going to do the next direction, which is your knit one. And it's kind of weird to do a knit one with your yarn to the front side, but it's not, because it's actually a yarn over. You did a decrease with a knit 2 together. Bringing your yarn forward is a yarn over. So you just canceled out your decrease. You decreased and added a stitch. Okay, now we're going to do the knit one, which is the next in there. And the knit one, you do it just like you're going to knit one. Even though your yarn is forward, you're going to go counterclockwise, wrap your yarn, do your knit stitch. Okay, now you got to be careful with this, with that little stitch, that yarn forward there, because it's going to cover up your slip stitch. You don't want it to do that. So just kind of hold it back a little bit, because now we have to do the PSSO, which is passing the slip stitch over. So we're going to come and pluck this right here in the front and pass it right over that stitch. And that's exactly what you're going to do. Okay? I'll show you that again because I have enough stitches here to do it. Okay? Without all the instruction. We're going to knit 2 together. We're going to bring our yarn forward, which all we're doing is bringing the yarn from the back in between the needles. Always go in between the needles to the front. We're going to go in here and slip as if to knit. And then this last one here, we're going to do our knit stitch. And then being careful not to let this yarn forward, okay, block our slip stitch here. We're going to go in here to this one that we slipped and pass it over. That's exactly what you're doing. Now, because you have these yarn forwards, you can see underneath of here that this stitch isn't connected to anything. That, you know, it's a yarn over. Here you can see your stitch is connected. This stitch is connected, but this one here, when you look underneath, it's not connected. That's your yarn over or your yarn forward. This is going to give you a lacy effect in your work. Okay, because to give a lacy effect in work, you have to do a yarn over stitch, and it'll give you a little lacy gap. But then because you're doing a yarn over, that's an increase. That's going to have your work going like this if you just keep increasing. So hence you have an increase and then a decrease, which keeps your work square. But that gives you your lacy details in your knit work. Was that helpful, Samantha? Oh, D-Lynn, you love it here. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Dishcloths was what I started out with when I first started knitting. It's what I would recommend you start anybody out with, whether you're crocheting or knitting. It is a fast project to complete. And in the beginning stages of crafting, if you can get stuff done, you know, like a project and in a couple of hours, it's really going to keep the interest, especially with the little ones. If they only want to do a couple of stitches, don't force them to finish the row. Let them do a couple of stitches, put it down. You know, the more you try to push something, the more they resist it. And when they start asking, hey, show me more, wait until they ask and show them more. Yeah, granny squares is something quick and easy, and it's completed. I try to, Liz, because when I was taught, my mom taught me how to do the stitches. She didn't tell me how to hold the yarn or how to keep my stitches from sliding off the end as a beginner. And it was really frustrating for me in the beginning. Really frustrating in the beginning. Been working on it for 2 weeks. Yeah, when you come across something that kind of makes it hard, you put it down. I put several of my PhDs, I call them PhDs, because I'm the yarnologist, projects half done. I'm always working on my PhDs. But yeah, when I get frustrated with something and I'm making multiple mistakes, one right after the other, I put it away for a while. I stop knitting or crocheting, or I work on another project, or I start another project. But yeah, when you get frustrated with something, take a break from it. Oh, thank you, Elsie. I do my best to add into teaching what I wished I would have been taught in the beginning. That would have made it a lot easier for me, a lot more helpful. We make it look easy. You know, you see us out in public and needles are just flying away and stuff is just coming. Yeah, frogging is kind of something that you do in the beginning. A lot of, I used to work past my mistakes. If my stitch counts weren't right, I'd add stitches in on that row I was working on. And then when I would get finished, I'd look back over it and it would look disastrous and I would end up pulling it out. Until I got the swing of it. And, you know, you get a little confident the more you go along. Don't get overconfident, because then you make all kinds of mistakes. Oh, I don't have to watch what I'm doing. I can watch TV, and you only needed 2 more rows and you needed 15 and you knitted 15. I've done that before. So, yeah, you have to keep pulling stuff out. No more frogging. Use a lifeline, especially if you're doing stuff like this and you're new to it. Every couple of rows after you know it's good, take a minute, put a lifeline in there. That way, if you do have to frog it, you don't have to do all that tinking. You don't have to try to remember which way your stitches were oriented, because they're on that lifeline. And it's very, very beneficial. I tell everybody to use one, and I still refuse to use one. So I haven't learned that lesson yet. Never knit sleepy. The other day, it was probably about a month ago, I say the other day, I was sitting watching TV late one evening with my husband, and I was just, mindlessly knitting stockinette stitch. And I was so comfortable. I was listening to the TV. I had my eyes closed, and I'm just knitting, doing a knit stitch away. And I mean, I had a long panel. It was over 100 stitches. And I had my eyes closed, and I'm just knitting. And my husband, I hear his chair shuffle. I still have my eyes closed, and I'm still knitting. He says to me, ever so quietly, "Are you sleeping?" I had to chuckle. I said, "No." He said, "I thought you were knit sleeping." I said, "No, I can't do that." He said, "Well, you should be able to." He said, "Your hands move all the time at night while you sleep." It was just funny that he thought I was knitting in my sleep. But yeah, you get comfortable, and sometimes you get overconfident, and it doesn't matter how long you've knitted. I've done it, watching TV, just knitting along. I'm in the zone. Boy, I'm really going to get this done. And then you got to pull 10, 15 rows out. But I'm going to go ahead and jump off here for now. Feeling pretty good today. So I will probably be back around 11:30. Crazy muscle memory. Yeah, I have serious muscle memory. And I do believe that it was because my great grandmother, she had issues with her eyesight, and she went blind later in life. And well, she wasn't blind to where she couldn't see, but her eyesight was so bad. And I don't know how old everybody is here in this group, but we had those old rotary telephones that you had to dial around, let it roll, dial another number. And I'm not kidding you. This is the top of a ketchup jar. And I'm trying to find something that's bigger that I can show you. Here it is. This little can of candy cookies, cream-filled wafers, whatever, and gives you an idea. The circles that you put your finger in to dial her phone were this big. They had to be that big for her to see the number. And there was 0 through 9 on that dial. So that phone was huge, hanging on the wall. And I remember trying to call my mom or making a phone call, dialing a number for her. I mean, literally sticking your finger in there. It just rolled around in that circle as you went around, and you hoped you got it all the way around before you messed the phone number up. But yes, they were that big around. They were bigger than a $50, the JFK dollar coin. Way bigger than that. But when I was younger, I was really concerned that I was going to go blind, because at 4 years old, I was wearing glasses. 5 years old, I had eye surgery. I have one eye that doesn't work anymore. So yeah, I can set my cup down, and I can reach and not even be looking, and grab my cup and not knock it over, because I know how far to extend my arm to reach that cup. And I can remember doing that as a kid, seeing how far, or counting how many steps from my bed to my bedroom door, and how many steps down the hallway to the bathroom. I used to do that as a kid. I guess I was seriously afraid that I was going to go blind too. But it's been beneficial later on in life, because I can do things without looking now, which is kind of fun sometimes. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and jump off. Husband's going to be calling here in about 4 minutes. And I did not tell him I was taking a nap. So if I don't answer, he'll get in the car and fly home from work thinking that, I'm in the floor injured somewhere. He has done that several times. But yes, I will come back today, and we might do some socks or discuss some other knitting things, or whatever you would like to do. So around 11:30, I'll be back. It gives me time to take a little break, stretch my legs, take my pups outside, grab something to eat, and then I will be back, and we can have fun. So I will see you all in a little while. 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. May all your stitch counts match. And as usual, happy crafting.